We are waiting. Okay. Hi.
Hello, morning.
Hello. Okay. Hello, Sylvia. Sylvia Debrovox. We have a nice colleague to Poland now. She's coming, Sylvia Debrovska. I hoped one time to introduce you, Santo, a lot of our colleague, very, very nice person. So we can start. And I want to start to introduce the Professor Scalia. Professor Scalia is of University of Ferrara, director of the unique university courses for technical beautician and for dermopigmentation. And now we want to speak about some topic of color, some secrets, what is inside this little magic bottle, chemical composition and body absorption. And okay, the people want to ask somebody something, can write, and we start quick, very quick. So the first, we can start to give a easy description about the secrets of this this composition, this ink for PMU tattoo and for artistic tattoo.
Yes, good morning to everybody. I'm sorry for my English not being as fluent as it should be, but I haven't been able to travel in the past few months because of the COVID, so I didn't practice much English in the past few or 3 months. So I thank Rita for organizing this talk, which focuses on the composition and fate of tattoo and PMU inks. I've got also some slides in order to make more clear my talk. So during my talk, I'm going to refer to colorant. With colorant, I include the pigments, which are insoluble in all solvents. Colorant, according to the official definition, includes also the dyes, which are soluble, and the lakes, which are produced by absorbing the dyes on a substrate to make them insoluble. So the information which I'm going to show you, to give it to you, are mainly based. I'm going to show the. Can you see the slide? Can you see, yes. Rita?
Yes, but is enough you. Basta che giri lo schermo e così ti allontani anche un attimo, se no si vede il viso troppo vicino. Perfetto.
That's okay.
It's okay. Yeah. I think it's perfect. So.
Yeah.
We can read.
So most of the information I'm
Santo,
going to give it to you.
Santo, scusa, se tu hai girato la telecamera, così vedi anche tu quello che inquadriamo noi. Senza girare il telefono, se tu giri solo la telecamera, come per fare un selfie, per capirsi, gira la telecamera, così vedi anche tu, ecco, perfetto, così vedi anche tu la stessa cosa che vediamo noi. So, okay, so it's clear, perfect.
So most of the information on the composition of these inks are taken from these reports by the Joint Research Center of the EC, European Commission. So the European Commission, which is one of the most important body, authority of the EU, the Parliament, the European Parliament, has asked the Joint Research Center to collect information about the composition and the safety of tattoo, because they want to develop, as you know, a new legislation, what is called the restrictive dossier. So in order to develop this new legislation, they wanted to have the state of art of the tattoo in PMU inks in Europe. So they collect information from internet. They ask the producer. In fact, some of the producers, this is another report, some of the producers have actually fill the questionnaire like Clinita. This is one, I don't know if you hear, if you see the list of the
We
producer.
are working about 4 years,
Yeah.
6 years for this project.
Yeah, that they produce. So this was very important for people like me that wanted to have information about the composition, because it's not easy to find this information. And one of the aim of the new legislation, as you probably know, is that the composition of the inks should be clearly stated on the bottle. So the main the ink are constituted. The ink are based on suspension of pigments in a solvent which contain other additives. So what I'm going to do now is just to describe the pigments, the solvent, and all the other additives present in the composition, in the formulation of these inks. The pigments are based, I'll show you the slide if you want, are based on inorganic pigments, which are normally less brilliant but more stable, and organic pigment. The difference between inorganic and organic, I've shown some formulas there, is on the structure, the chemical structure. The inorganic pigment do not contain carbon atom bond to hydrogen atom. So carbon black, which is one of the most commonly used pigment, is inorganic because it doesn't contain hydrogen, but just carbon. And the organic pigment, on the other hand, are characterized, include pigment where formulas contain carbon atom bound to hydrogen atom. So in order to be colored, these substances have to absorb the light, the visible light, because they absorb a selective wavelength of the light and they show the color which is complementary to this light. That's the reason why pigment have this such complex formula, because in order to absorb this light, they have to have a lot of double bond. I don't want to get too much into chemistry, but they have to have a lot of double bond, conjugated double bond. This conjugated double bond, like this aromatic ring you see there, I don't know if you see the azo colorant, which are the most commonly used organic pigment. They have all these double bond. These allow the molecule to have the right absorption level to absorb a wavelength and then to show the complementary color. So these complex formula are due to the fact that because of this complex formula, these molecules are able to absorb light. I would like to just spend a few minutes on the nomenclature, which is quite complex, but this is going to be very important, particularly now that we are the producer with the new legislation and to put the exact composition. So the American tend to use the FDA nomenclature, whereas in Europe we use the color index nomenclature, which is a very, I think from my point of view and from the point of view of most of the people, is the most specific nomenclature for this colorant. In fact, the color index is based on a generic name, say acid red, followed by 5 numbers. The first 2 numbers of this nomenclature indicate the group, the family, the chemical family to which the color is included. So, for instance, the azo they have the first 2 numbers comprised between 11 and 39. So this is quite good because you can have an idea which kind of colorant is present in your pigment, in your ink, sorry. So the colorant are the main component of the ink. They can get, you can have up to 60% by weight of the composition based on the pigment or the pigment. So the pigment are the main component of this ink. I don't know if you see this table, this data from the report from the Joint Research Center indicate that for the colored pigment, the colored pigment are based mainly on organic substances. So the available pigment, colored pigment, are based mainly on organic substances. However, the most commonly used color is black, and the black pigment, I don't know if you see the slide, are based only on inorganic substances, and the black, carbon black, is the most commonly used substance. So I hope I've been clear in my in what I say. So although although most colorant are organic, the most commonly used colorant is inorganic because it's carbon black. Rita, if you have any, is it clear? Can you understand me?
I think it's clear. Nobody's right. Any questions? So we can go away.
So now I want to show you a brief description of the different type of colorant, because I want to point out a very peculiar thing, which is a bit of a paradox. So as I said before, the European Commission now is going to regulate. There is going to be a uniform legislation in Europe, which is quite useful because, as you know, tattooing and PMU is increasing. The number of people with tattoo or PMU is increasing. And so it's quite strange that there is not a uniform legislation. And this is particularly strange if you think that cosmetic products which are applied on the skin, on the surface of the skin, have been regulated for years. And one consequence of this situation, which is not uniform, for instance, Italy has got a legislation which is based on RESAP 2008, but other countries in Europe do not have the same legislation. So this is quite strange because everybody talk about the European Union as a way to uniformize legislation and to facilitate, to help the exportation of product in Europe. So one consequence of this situation, which is going to end up, because I heard talk about European Commission representative, they say that by 2021, probably you know as well, there's going to be a uniform legislation. Because what is going to happen, says, here I show you the red colorant, which are based mainly on organic pigment, and the main pigment are monoazo. You see that they have found that in tattoo particularly, because permanent makeup ink are normally more controlled, are they are more accurately produced, so they don't have as many problems. They didn't have as many problems as tattooing. But as you see, they found in this study that about 60% of red pigment found in tattooing are not allowed or allowed with restriction in cosmetics. This is a study which gave a picture by 2015-17, so 2015, so probably the situation has changed. So you see that it's quite strange that if a colorant, a pigment, raise concern, safety concern for a product which is applied on the skin, it should raise the same concern for the product that, as you know, is injected intradermally. So that's the reason why the European Commission is going to regulate. This is one of the reasons why the European Commission is going to develop a new regulation. And the same applied to other pigment. You see this, the yellow colorant, based also mainly on organic pigment, and 64% of the colorant available are not allowed or with restriction in cosmetic, and this go on for other color, the violet and blue colorant. I don't think is really it had further information. I just want to show you what this peculiar situation, which is, as I say to you, is going to end up. So these are based, this is the green color, and also for this green color and mainly are based mainly on organic pigment. And for the black colorant, however, as I said before, the pigment used are only inorganic, and the most frequently used, the most commonly used is carbon black. So that's the situation with the composition of the main component of this ink, the colorant. As I say, up to 60%. So these colorants are based on inorganic and organic compounds, and as I told you before, the most commonly used is carbon black, although there are more organic pigment available on the market. For production of this pigment, it's not always easy to find out who produced what. I don't know if you can see this slide, which is based on the Joint Research Center study, which indicate the production is based mainly on the United States, Germany, UK, and China. For PMU, the production is based mainly on Europe. In Italy, for instance, there are 5 companies, but there are 17 if you include the company which import product. And generally speaking, PMU, I don't know if, can you see this? PMU are more expensive and less used, but also more pure, so more accurately produced.
Okay.
This lies describe also the frequency of color with regard to the removers. And of course, since black is the most commonly used pigment, is also the most commonly used tattoo, the most frequently tattoo to be removed. As I said before, colorant are the main ingredient, of course, of the ink, but together with the colorant, there are a series of other components, additives, which are also very important for the efficiency of the tattooing. The second
about this, I have a question. I don't know if you speak later or now, but a lot of new ink contain new acrylic, there's a lot of acrylic inside and resin. What do you think about these new tendencies with acrylic, with resin in ink?
Okay, Rita, if of you is okay, I'm going to get to this resin while I'm describing the different additives. So, I just
okay.
but I will stop and I will stop emphasize this point because this is something also very interesting for me too. So
thank you.
So after following the pigment, the second most important component in the ink are the solvent. So the solvent is the carrier which the pigment is dispersed, is suspended. So as you see, it can get up, it can it can comprise up to 10-30% of the whole ink by weight. The solvent, as you see in the slide, are mainly water, ethanol, isopropanol, isopropyl alcohol, and propylene glycol are frequently used because they tend to facilitate, to promote the dispersion of the pigment. I would like to remind you that the pigment are insoluble, but they must be dispersed uniformly in order to give an efficient and a performance, an optimal performance for the tattoo or PMU or permanent makeup. So it is important they are not soluble, but they must be dispersed uniformly. So that's why the isopropanol and propylene glycol are used, because they promote the dispersion. Glycerin is also used as a solvent. One advantage, or some of the advantage of the glycerin is, first of all, that it increases the viscosity. So the viscosity is also useful for ink, because viscosity helps the dispersion of the product and inhibits the sedimentation, precipitation of the pigment. So it helps in the uniform distribution of the pigment. Glycerin is also a humectant, so it binds water. So since this ink are implanted, introduced in the dermis, which is rich in water, it's important that to have humectant, to maintain the water content. So these pigment and solvent are the main components. So with pigment and solvent are responsible for up to 90–95% of the formulation. The rest, the 5–10% remaining, is comprise preservatives. So I would like to emphasize that preservatives should be added just to avoid, to inhibit the contamination of the product during the use. They are not supposed to be added in large quantity to maintain sterility. The product should be sterile, and these are added only to avoid, during the application of tattoo, they could be to avoid contamination during application of tattoo. I remind you, I would like to underline, I don't know if you see the slide, that Resap suggests that preferably the ink should be placed in a package for single use. Preservatives use most of the preservative use are those that you find in cosmetics, but I would like to emphasize that formaldehyde was found in some of this ink, probably the not very good ink, but in the new legislation, since formaldehyde is not allowed in cosmetic, will not be allowed also in the inks for tattoo and permanent makeup.
I hope.
Sorry?
I hope. I hope so.
Yeah, no, that is in the restriction dossier. This is pointed out.
You remember in the last direct, one customer tell us that was inside formaldehyde, but the producer tell is not important to write, because it was really a little component, so was very strange. You remember?
Yeah,
the last direct.
Well, the new legislation just point out that no formaldehyde should be present in a product that to be commercialized for tattoo or permanent makeup. You can find surfactant also in formulation of the tattoo. Surfactant is a very common additive excipient in cosmetic product, because they have a lot of properties. Surfactant, I would like to remind you, are a very peculiar molecule which contain in their own structure a lipophilic, quindi oil-like part, and a hydrophilic portion. So because of this peculiar structure, they are able to absorb at the interface. So they're able to absorb on the particle, on the pigment particle, and by absorbing on the pigment particle, they avoid the aggregation of the particle. I remember I would like also to stress again that the particle, the pigment, should remain homogeneously dispersed. Otherwise, yes, the uniformity, the color uniformity will be lost. Another additive that now I'll get to the point of the acrylic polymers. Another additive that is used for the formulation of tattoo and permanent makeup ink is the thickening agent. Those are additives which are used in order to increase the viscosity, so of the formulation. This means that the formulation is less fluid, and this viscosity increase reduce the possibility, the sedimentation, the precipitation of the pigment. Another additive which is present, can be present in some of the formulation, are the binders. And here I come to the question that Rita asked before. Binders are normally polymers which tend to form a film, and this, by forming this film, they ensure that retention of the pigment in the tissue, in the dermal tissue. As I will examine later on in this brief discussion, one of the problems that could happen, could occur, is that the pigment don't...
Excuse me, somebody write, I don't hear anything. Everybody hear? Or only Elvira can hear?
Ah, that's a pity.
No, I think only Elvira. No.
They don't hear.
Only Elvira. Elvira Grachik, do you hear now? The other people can write if everybody... No, it's okay, the other people write. So Elvira, I think you can check your phone or your laptop. Okay, everybody okay. Thank you, Elena. Thank you, Declare. Okay. Okay, I think it's a problem only for one. I hope
okay.
she can
come
back.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah, if they want, I can maybe send some of the slides.
No, all the people can hear. Okay. Okay.
So I was describing the additives, excipients present in the tattoo inks. I say to you before that they get up to 5–10% of the total composition. Among these, I was describing the binders. The binders are excipients which are used in order to ensure the retention of the pigments in the site of injection, of deposition, introduction in the dermis. Because of that, normally the polymeric substances which form a film on the site of injection. By forming this film, they ensure the retention of the pigment in this injection site. Among these polymers, as you say, I included the acrylic polymers that Rita was talking about before, because I found several formulations in the internet describing the introduction of these acrylic polymers. Acrylic polymers are commonly used also in cosmetics. For instance, gels are based on acrylic polymer, Carbomer, probably you know. Also, fixative gels for hair are based on acrylic polymer. So they are components that are quite common in the cosmetic field. From my point of view, the use of this acrylic polymer in ink should be examined with attention, because we do not have data on the toxicity of these polymers in the dermis. So we know that they can be used on the skin, on the hair, but as far as I know, I haven't seen any toxicological study on this.
We haven't studied about the digest, about
on the
how
dermis.
our body absorbs.
So they should be used with attention, and this is something that it should be object of further studies from my point of view. Other additives can be fillers, so just additives that are used to make to fill up, to increase the volume of the formulation. Fragrances, this should not be used, because fragrancy can give allergic problems. So, and then pH, acid or base to adjust the pH of the formulation. Also for the additives, the Joint Research Study Center has developed tables which indicate the main additives used. I just put it first to let you know that there are these additives have been also studied by this Joint Research Center. In this slide, I illustrate some formulation that I've taken from the internet. So I didn't put, of course, the name of the producer. So formulation can be very simple, like this one made in USA, pigment. You see the chemical, the color index, number, and the additives. So water, glycerin, Mammalis virginiana, hazelnut. Is quite commonly used because it's a soothing agent, it's also astringent, so it's quite commonly used in the formulation of ink. Isopropanol is a solvent, but also is a dispersing agent. Benzyl alcohol is also used as a preservative. And colophon is a natural resin. So before we were talking about this polymer like acrylic resin used to help to favor the retention of the colorant in the dermis. In this case, they use colophon, which is a natural resin. And so this is a pigment made in Italy, very simple formulation. You see pigment and then water, aqua di amamelis, the one, glycerin, ethanol. This is another another ink made in Italy. The producers said the pigment were reduced to 5 micron. I'm going to talk to you later on the importance and dimension of the pigment. And you see, as among the additive, there is copolymer of acrylic.
Sometimes too little is not a big value.
Sometimes no, actually, maybe
it's more, it's dangerous.
In particular, nano. Nano is particularly is of particular concern.
Okay. I think we speak later about the where the ink
copolymer acrylic acid, metacrylic acid. You see they're using here this acrylic resin. They use glycerin pharmacopoeia, so the purified glycerin, propylene glycol. Those are other formulations. These are made in USA. You see in all the formulation, you know, if you see they use acrylic resin. So these acrylic resin, in this case, are quite common because, as I say to you, they help, favor the retention of the pigment in the site of action. These are the formula of this acrylic resin because they are commonly used also in the pharmaceutical field. I teach pharmaceutics at the university. They are used for film, for protecting capsule or tablet. But of course, these are by ingestion, oral administration. So it's not dermal administration. These are other. So I've been briefly described to you. I hope you have had an idea at least of what is contained in this ink formulation. So what is the composition of the inks? Quindi pigment, main component, solvent, and other additives. Now I'm going to briefly talk to you about the colorant retention, the fate of this colorant.
One question before start with another argument. I want to introduce to our people that she's there.
Sorry, can you repeat?
Yes, I want to ask you something because you speak about alcohol, and we discussed a lot before this direct about phthalate, the new thing, the government and for the safety for the people have tried inside our bottle the phthalate. what does she mean for our bodies? Very tangible thing.
Yeah, they phthalate do interfere with the reproduction, with the reproductive, with reproduction. So they are reproductive interference.
Endocrine.
So yeah, so the reproductive system. So attention should be paid to the presence of this phthalate. Phthalate are commonly used as additive in the production of plastic because are plastic stabilizer. So phthalate can come from the container, and alcohol, of course, as a solvent, can facilitate or can favor the diffusion of these additives, which are present in the polymer structure. The presence of this alcohol can favor partly the diffusion of this phthalate in the ink. And actually, I've done a few years ago a study with a chemical company here in Ferrara. We actually do produce polymer, and we found a different type of polymer can release different amount of additive like the phthalate. So attention should be paid to the type of polymer used for the plastic. And also, this was something that we came we discussed with Rita also in the previous talk. Because of the use of the resin I mentioned to you before, like the acrylic resin, this synthetic resin, phthalate could come also from this resin, because as all polymer, also the acrylic resin, they probably use phthalate in the production in order to stabilize this resin. So we have also this new possible source of phthalate. So this is something that should be looked carefully. And the phthalate are not supposed to be allergen, but they are, however, they are toxic. They do interfere with the reproductive system.
Endocrine system. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so what happened to this pigment, to the ink and the pigment, because are the main component of the ink, once you inject it, when you introduce in the dermis? One should suppose that because the pigments are based on insoluble particles, they should remain where the operator or the tattooist inject, or the person actually make the tattoo, inject the tattoo. But this is not the case, and actually there are several studies, one in particular, who actually has demonstrated, I don't know if you've seen the slide, that as much as 50-60% of the initial concentration of the pigment is lost. I must say that this study has been done also in vivo, but on animal skin, in mouse, which is thinner than human skin. So probably for human, this value is a bit too high. But however, it has been demonstrated that there is a reduction, a decrease in the level of the pigment deposited, implanted in the dermis. The person who has a tattoo doesn't really doesn't recognize this reduction, because the color is so intense that it is difficult to detect a reduction of such a level. And also, as I said to you earlier, probably in human this decrease is not as high as that found in mouse skin. What are the reasons? What are the mechanisms at the base, of this decrease in the level of the initial concentration of pigments injected? First mechanism is of course the bleeding and the edema, which is formed immediately after the insertion of the pigment. But other mechanisms have been reported in several studies. Actually, there are several scientific studies. Scientific study is something which is, to me, more reliable than some study that you see in internet, because in order for a paper to be published in a scientific journal, it must be read and reviewed by 2 or 3 different scientists. So there is more, you can never be sure, but I mean, there is high probability that what is written in there is close to the truth. One mechanism at the base of the loss of the pigment is the passive diffusion in the extracellular matrix. So the pigment particle diffuse. This is a phenomenon that it happens always when you have a particle, a molecule, tend to diffuse. And this diffusion is favored by smaller dimension. So now I'm going to go back to Rita question. So with the smaller the dimension of the particle, the easier is the diffusion. This means that the particle can diffuse, get to the lymphatic circulation, and then get to the lymph node or back to the systemic circulation. That's why I was saying before, in particular nanoparticle tend to particle very small, 1,000 of micron, between 1 and 100 nanometer particle tend to diffuse very easily. And unfortunately, it has been demonstrated by scientific study that the pigment do contain nanoparticle, in particular black, carbon black, but also organic pigment, but in particular carbon black. This has been reported in a European Commission report, are present. So this could be one of the reasons why there is a decrease of the content, or there is a migration of the pigment, because the smaller particle present tend to diffuse more easily. So this is one mechanism.
The carbon black is a particular component. It can really change and change the pH of the skin. Some people put anesthetics, so change basic to acid and acid to basic, and it was really dangerous. In the same time, the carbon black, you know better than me, is a lot of different type of carbon black at different method to for the extraction of carbon black. So sometimes the carbon black maybe is really safety, as sometimes with hydrocarbon is very dangerous component.
So you're talking about the
impurity. Yes, impurity.
Impurity. But also the dimension, the size of the particle should be examined in more details, because as you say, there are different types of carbon black, of materials that is available for the preparation of this ink, and it will be preferable, it should be, my advice is try to use carbon black which does not contain higher percentage of nanoparticle, because nanoparticle raise always the concern, because also nanoparticle can penetrate into the cell more easily. So as you know, there are a lot of studies on toxicity.
We have a lot of pictures with lymphatic with completely blue or black and green.
Yeah, exactly. With the smaller the particle, the easier they can diffuse it.
Yes.
Another mechanism which is at the base of which cause a reduction of the initial concentration of pigment is the phagocytosis. So internalization in macrophages, and macrophages are specialized cells which are present in the dermis, are part of the immune system that can internalize particle. As with the smaller the particle, the easier is for the macrophage to internalize this particle. You see here, normally they are very efficient with particle smaller than 10 micron. And this is another mechanism by which you can have pigment particle present in the lymph node, because macrophage also help present the particle, transport the particle to the lymph node. So these are mechanisms. Actually, in this slide, I showed to you a recent study. We show that internalization in macrophage.
You can move just a little the phone because we don't see. Okay, thank you.
Is an equilibrium mechanism. So macrophage internalize this pigment. Then the macrophage, when they're not their life is shorter than the normal human life, so they are destroyed. The pigment are excreted and then are internalized again by the new macrophages. So it's an equilibrium. But there's we have examined the passive and diffusion, internalization in macrophage. Another possible mechanism responsible for the reduction of the initial concentration of pigment could be metabolism. But I see I put a question mark because the enzymatic activity in the dermal is very small, very little. In the skin, the enzyme activity is mainly localized in the.
Abbiamo perso. Aspettiamo. We wait just a second. We hope the professor come back. We lose just a moment the connection. So we try to wait.
Okay, the presence of pigment particle in mice liver, but this study have not been confirmed by other studies, so that's why I put a question mark. This is not absolutely, it has not been confirmed. So there are some scientists who have found pigment particle in the liver. This means that the particle not only diffuse in the lymphatic system, lymph node, but also in the systemic circulation, quindi blood vessel. And this another mechanism that
excuse me, Sandro, we have 8 minutes just for tell you.
Okay.
We have only
another
8 minutes.
Mechanism,
if somebody want to ask something, is the last
I just mentioned this, and that I could photodegradation. This is another mechanism. Photodegradation induced by the UV light present in the sun, with UVA can reach the dermis, or the laser, which is the main technique used for the removal of the pigment. The photodegradation not only involve the fading, so the reduction intensity of the color, but also it has been demonstrated by several studies, production of possible toxic product. And this is a problem which is involved also in the laser radiation. There are several studies going on this, that the laser radiation could produce toxic products. So it is important to enhance the stability, the photostability of the pigments. And these are studies, if somebody is interested, I can give the reference of the study demonstrating the photodegradation. It has been demonstrated also in vivo, in a mouse model, photodegradation. And I would like to let you know that I've been doing some study on this subject, incorporating pigment in lipid microparticle, which are natural. So at various with the acrylic resin, they are able to stabilize the pigment, to maintain the pigment in the dermis, but being lipids are not toxic. And now we are studying if they are stable in the body, in vivo. I presented this as Rita in the last European conference in Bern, and also the study is going to be published in Photochemistry Photobiology, which is the journal of the American Society of Photobiology.
We follow very, very near.
Yeah. So if I can stop here, and I don't know if
I don't see any questions, so I think you are very, very clear.
Oh,
Any questions?
I hope so. I just would like to add a few things. The main, as you know, the pigment tattoo and PMU, permanent makeup, involve some risk, toxicological risk, and which is based mainly on microbiological infection, but the main risk are due to chemical hazard, as indicated by the RAPEX, you know, this rapid alert system for dangerous non-food
I
products.
recommend every perfectionist to check the RAPEX, read the ingredients and search in your laptop, in your iPhone, search, because you can try everything. You write the color index, you write everything. If you are curious, you can understand always better and protect your customers.
Yeah, and one thing I would like to emphasize.
It's possible to get this presentation on the side of or photocopy. We save this and we put in YouTube, so you can see another time. Okay. And
one thing I would like to
we do this during the training. Okay, also in the university, but we can save this direct in YouTube.
Yeah. One thing I would like to emphasize, to underline, that among the chemical risk, there have been 126 tattoo alerts in the between 2005 2016, but you see only 9% due to the only 9% due to permanent makeup. The main percentage, vast majority of alert are due to tattoos. So this also demonstrate that permanent makeup are normally produced with more attention, more pure. So that's I wanted to emphasize this point. And well, these are other information regarding the RAPEX. And also one thing I would like to emphasize with regard to the possible toxic substances as are present in the tattoo and permanent makeup. One problem is the fake inks. This may probably so people get inks from the internet, because there's no control on this fake ink. So that's is a big problem. And all this something happened. Newspaper, the last year newspaper in Italy, where a few tattoo inks were found to contain toxic products. So
in the last 3 years, we have saw a lot of RAPEX with this resin, with aromatic amine and benzopyrene, a lot of new ink with synthetic color, with organic color, and a lot of synthetic and dangerous inside. So I recommend always to control the RAPEX.
And also, as a conclusion, I would like to inform you that because of the lack of information, of precise information about tattoo and PMU inks, the European Commission asked ECHA to assess the risk and to develop a restriction. This restriction dossier, these are is in the form of a draft. Is going to be examined. There is a consultation. So probably, as Rita knows, by 2021, this area, this product will be regulated in a very precise way. And also, since we have people listening to me from different countries, this regulation, this legislation should be uniform. So this is very important for people who actually export product, and to have a uniform directive.
Also uniform the method about the control and the check in the different countries, because in some countries it's okay, and other countries become dangerous. So we must have a balance. What can I tell you? Always thank you. For me, it's always a pleasure when you heard.
Thank you to you.
Hour to listen to you. And
it was a new experience.
Yes, in English, we try in English. We have, I saw a lot of Poland people, English people, Ireland people, Israel people. Nächstes Mal, wir machen auch in Deutsch, wenn du willst probieren. Ich habe gesehen, auch Deutsch people, so eine Grüße. I give a little part of Deutsch people, so thank you for everything, and thank you so much always, Santo.
Thank you to you.
We can try to organize the Saturday with Professor, one coffee with Professor, one time on a month.
On a specific subject, yeah, why not?
Yeah, yes, it's a nice idea. Thank you, because
thank you to you
it's
too.
It's not only smoke. We need really skills. It's different.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for all. Bye. Have a nice day.
Bye.
Thank you.